Welcome to the All Athletes Podcast.
Hello, everybody. I'm Hayden Dahlhair. I'll be your host for today's podcast, and we are going to get into a great topic today, something I think is not talked about enough, which is anxiety in collegiate athletics. And this will be a great topic to discuss and communicate. We're going to bring a guest in today, and we'll be able to discuss with them their opinions and their experiences with it, and just get a good overall broad understanding of the topic, and just try to stir some discussion, which can hopefully be carried on into our communities. So I thank you guys for tuning in to listen, and I'm excited to get the discussion going. We're going to start this podcast off with one of my close friends, Tino Mirlo. We're going to have a great discussion about sports and athletics and sports and collegiate athletics specifically, and we'll talk about a variety of things, see how his past in sports, and just see how he feels about the topic in general. So hope you guys enjoy. Hello, I'm here today with my guest, Tino Mirlo, a current University of Kentucky offensive lineman. Tino, let me tell us about your kind of build up in your past and your childhood with sports.
From a young age, I always loved sports. My dad put me in soccer, basketball, all that kind of stuff. I played soccer pretty much all the way to high school up till I was in about 8th grade. Then my parents, they never really wanted me to play football that much growing up because they were always worried about me getting hurt. But then obviously my size kind of contradicted what they were saying and kind of forced me to play the sport. And ever since then, I've always loved playing football.
So today we're talking about anxiety in college athletics. And in this, there's tons of facts and there's tons of information out there that really hasn't been discussed or talked about and is kind of behind the scenes. Like, for example, the American College of Sports Medicine in 2023, so this year, did a study and said only 10% of athletes that have a known mental health issue, this isn't including the athletes that haven't even been diagnosed or haven't been talked about it before, like, are willing to seek help and actually seek help and with their mental health. And I think this is an issue that is throughout all college athletics. I mean, I personally have had mental health issues, and seeking help's a hard thing. And I think it's not really there hasn't been a good foundation and support system to make it okay to seek help in college athletics. And I don't know if you've seen that in your time being a college athlete.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it. I've experienced it. Things happen where you have adversity, and sometimes it's hard to deal with, even if it's not adversity. Things can just go wrong during your sport, and things can go wrong out of your sport, and it can really affect you mentally with working out, playing, just make you feel a little bit different on the field, like you have no drive. It's just a hard thing to deal with, but you got to push through it sometimes,
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing, and people don't really talk about how there's like a stigma that college athletes have this great life. They're living a perfect life, when less than half of college athletes would even possibly feel comfortable, and that was due to NCAA survey in 2023. But 10% of with known actually end up even seeking help. You know what I mean? Like, so like there's a stigma that a lot of athletes have this perfect life and there's no issues, and I think it's a harsh stigma, and it puts a harsh pressures on athletes. You know what I mean? And it's a tough issue, and I think that it's something that I feel like needs to be discussed more and it's in society as a whole today. And then another big thing for me is, if you look at athletics, is just kind of the fact that, like, as maybe negative or bad as it is, a lot of athletes find their identity in their sport. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And if your identity is based on your performance, it's rough. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's rough. You have one bad day, you have one bad practice, you have a bad game, and you're getting chewed out by your coach, or and you're just frustrated with yourself because, I mean, as you know, we're not going to be perfect, right? And you make that mistake, and your whole mental health is based on that one thing. I think that can be rough for people.
Yep.
So, Tino, thanks for coming in today and talking to me. I really appreciate it.
And here with me.
No, of course, and I hope your sports and at UK go great. And
same with you, man.
I appreciate it. So like for me, like in high school, I remember going through a rough period of time, and I was playing really bad in sports and worried about college and stuff. And so for me, I see how that translated onto the field. My frustration with how I played and how I performed behind the scenes really hurt me and led some things I had to deal with. People don't see that side of it, and athletes, I feel like it's kind of it's a big issue. And I think there's so many athletes that don't actually end up talking about their issues, and they're like behind the scenes. There's so many issues and so many athletes that go on to not be able to discuss this, and it's kind of like it's a silent issue where athletes don't like discussing this because they don't feel understood or feel heard. And especially in college, it's a business at this point, you know what I mean? Like athletes, as much as schools want to say like that they care, and sometimes they do, but it's a business. These coaches have to win or they're going to lose their job. These schools need to bring in money or they're not going to be able to support their school and their college system. I just think it's a lot of pressure put on those athletes. It's really hard to understand if you haven't gone through something similar to it. Because really, like, athletes are at their colleges because of their sport at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, they might have chose a college because they liked the school or liked whatever, but they're at that college because of their sport. And it's hard being under that microscope of looking at every small decision you make, every small thing you do in your game or practice, and from outsiders looking in, talking bad about you, and then you have coaches talking down to you, and then it's just an issue that I feel like needs to be more understood in society today. And I think that it's very hard to see, It's like, for example, there's the Cleveland Clinic, which is one of like the most prestigious clinics across America. Do you know what I mean? And they continue to talk about how the professionals in mental health, like the public eye put on the athletes, it's really hard to understand, it's hard to see. That sort of attention and criticism hurts people's mental health, especially athletes. And understanding that this microscope, that every decision you make is going to be looked at by thousands and thousands of people. And then you see like these news outlets, they're going to report on every decision you make, and we're all going to make mistakes, but I feel like athletes can be held to a higher standard, and people don't understand that. And so another thing I've noticed is that when people do act like they care, it never seems very sincere. So like in the world today, we see like this big movement in mental health. You know what I mean? Like especially in recent years, that your mental health is important. You need to help your mental health and get it right. And I just don't see that being talked about in sports. I see I think it's great that there's a big movement, but it's not really talked about in sports. And when it does, you'll see big athletes, for example, DeMar DeRozan came out a couple years ago talking about how he dealt with anxiety and how it was really rough for him, and how that he had to deal with that, and how he worked through it, and how it's affecting him, just to speak out about it. And I think that was phenomenal. But you see all these big news articles, oh my gosh, DeMar DeRozan talks about mental health, how great, this should be a wake up for everybody to help their mental health. It'll make a big news headline, these companies make tons of money off their articles, and then it's not talked about again. I think it's big props to DeMar and the athletes like that who continue to talk about how their mental health is challenged, because I think it's a discussion that society needs to have more. But I just think that it's very for show sometimes, not the athletes, but for people actually reporting on it. And then there's not a lot of resources around us. I mean, they can get us in touch with the counselor or whatever it is, but there's not really a push towards like, hey, if you're not okay, it's okay, and we want to help you become okay. You just kind of deal with it, push it to the side, and I think that's a big issue throughout college athletics.
And so I appreciate everyone listening to this podcast. I really do, and I really am grateful for it. I think the big thing that I really wanted to get out of this was just to make people aware of the topic, start discussion. I challenge all you as listeners to start discussing this topic, make it known, make it relevant. Make sure that people understand what it is, the issues and the things that these athletes go through, and that's what I hope for. And I also pray and hope that this can lead to changes in the future. And right now, I really think that the main thing that just needs to happen is just communication and conversation about the topic. There's only limited things that people can do at the moment, and I hope eventually that we can go towards these steps. Reducing the stigma is just the main issue right now. And so when we get that stigma away, people can talk about the issue and understand the importance and it really should be important to everyone. Mental health in general is important. Like you have a kid, a son, a daughter, cousins, friends, family, parents, that deal with mental health, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, you need to make sure you're okay, blah, blah, blah. That's phenomenal. That's great. But I think the same thing needs to be applied in sports, because people seem to look past it a lot in sports. Because sports can be used as compensation, but it really never fixes any issues. And I think that it just needs to be fixed and helped. And I hope that as listeners, everyone can go out and start this conversation, start talking, start communicating why this issue is important and why this issue needs to be talked about. But I thank you everyone for listening. I hope you had a great time today, and go out in your community, start the discussion, and talk why athletes need more to destigmatize this issue, and why athletes need to be more recognized in that category. So I thank everyone for listening, and have a phenomenal day.